The news was electrifying, an unexpected move, a decision no one had seen coming. As the world watched in anticipation, Ibrahim Traoré stood before the cameras, not just as a leader of Burkina Faso, but as a symbol of defiance, truth, and a reckoning that would shape history forever. The quiet tension was palpable, as if the whole world was holding its breath for what he would say next. And then, with a single, unexpected word, he unleashed a fury of change. It was the year 2025, a time when the world stood at a precipice of chaos and potential. Governments faltered, diplomacy teetered, and the voice of the global south seemed to be muffled under the weight of the status quo. But in the heart of Africa, a new voice had risen. Ibrahim Traoré, the young, passionate leader of Burkina Faso, had been at the forefront of a movement aimed at rewriting the script of Africa's future. The air in Ouagadougou, the capital, was thick with the weight of history. The sun burned high in the sky, casting long, harsh shadows over the streets. The usual noise of city life, motorcycles, the chatter of people, the honking of car horns, had subsided. Today was different. Today, Ibrahim was about to do what no one had ever dared. He was going to speak to the world in a way that would shatter expectations and forever alter the global narrative. Inside the Grand Hall of the African Union, the tension was thick. World leaders, diplomats, and journalists filled the room. Each one knew that Ibrahim Traoré was different. His presence was magnetic, his speeches were fiery, and his resolve was unshakable. Yet no one could have predicted the turn of events that would unfold before their very eyes. Ibrahim stood at the podium, a tall, formidable figure in a simple yet elegant suit. His eyes, though tired, burned with a fire that reflected the struggles of his people. A quick glance at the screens around the room showed images of him, of his country, his people, all looking to him, waiting for his words to ignite change. He was their beacon of hope, their warrior in a world that had long ignored their cries. But as he cleared his throat and began speaking, the world was unprepared for the storm he was about to unleash. "Mr. Traoré," a voice from the back of the room interrupted. "How do you respond to accusations that your policies will destabilize not just Burkina Faso, but the entire continent?" The voice belonged to none other than the French ambassador, a man who represented the old powers, the colonial era thinking that still sought to control Africa's future. His words were measured, but his intent was clear: undermine the rising power of Burkina Faso and, by extension, Ibrahim Traoré. But what followed in response was nothing short of remarkable. Ibrahim's gaze turned toward the ambassador, his expression unreadable for a moment. The room fell into an unnerving silence. It was as if time itself had paused. Ibrahim's words were deliberate, carefully chosen, and yet they were loaded with a quiet fury that sent a shockwave through the room. "You ask about destabilization," Ibrahim said, his voice steady, but with an edge that cut through the noise of doubt. "But what destabilization are you speaking of? The destabilization of foreign influence over my people? The destabilization of a system that has for so long drained Africa of its resources? If that is the kind of destabilization you fear, then I say let it come. For too long Africa has been silent. For too long we have been forced to swallow injustice, exploitation, and inequality. No more." The ambassador recoiled slightly, his face a mixture of surprise and disbelief. This was not the response he had anticipated. The room was electric, and the world watching knew that something momentous was unfolding. Just as the tension seemed to reach its peak, Ibrahim delivered a twist that no one saw coming. His next words would change everything. He paused for a brief moment, as if gathering something deeper within him. "Let me show you something," Ibrahim said, motioning toward the large screen behind him. The journalists, camera operators, and diplomats looked on, confused. What was he about to reveal? The screen flickered to life and the room fell deathly silent as images began to unfold. Images of Burkina Faso's natural resources, its gold mines, its oil reserves, and its land. Resources that had been systematically stolen and exploited. for decades by foreign corporations, including the ones that funded the very ambassadors sitting before him. The silence in the room deepened, a profound sense of realization creeping in. Ibrahim spoke again, his words measured but full of weight. This is our land, our resources, our future. And if the world continues to turn a blind eye to our suffering, to our exploitation, then we will no longer be a silent partner in this grand deception. The images on the screen flickered to images of corrupt CEOs from foreign mining companies, men whose names were well known in global economic circles. These were the men who for years had pilfered from the people of Burkina Faso, who had treated the land as a commodity to be mined and sold with no regard for the people who lived on it. Ibrahim's finger pointed toward the screen, each word, like a hammer striking the final nail in the coffin of colonialism. These men have stolen our wealth. They have poisoned our rivers, our fields, and our future, but no more. Today, we reclaim what is ours. The room was in shock. Some gasped, others muttered among themselves. The implications of Ibrahim's words were profound. This was not just a speech, it was a declaration of war against the powers that had long controlled the fate of Africa. For a moment, Ibrahim seemed to lose himself in the gravity of what he had just said. His voice grew quiet, almost a whisper as he spoke to the room full of powerful men and women. I know the price of speaking this truth. I know the dangers. But what is the cost? Of silence? What is the cost of living in a world where injustice thrives in the shadows, unseen and unchallenged? The silence that followed was deafening. The world was on the edge of its seat, waiting for the next move. And then, something unexpected happened. The room, once filled with tension, began to shift. The energy in the room changed, subtly, at first, then more noticeably as others began to speak up. I stand with you, a delegate from Nigeria said, his voice firm and supportive. The time for change is now. One by one, other African leaders began to voice their support for Ibrahim's words, their voices rising in a chorus of solidarity. The tide was turning. The world was witnessing something extraordinary, a united front not just from one leader but from a collective that had long been silenced. The final moments of the speech were not filled with grand gestures or fiery rhetoric. Instead, they were marked by a quiet, powerful sense of resolution. Ibrahim Traoré had done what no one had dared. He had shaken the very foundations of global power, standing tall against those who sought to control the continent's future. As the applause echoed through the hall, Ibrahim stood still, his eyes not on the crowd but on the future. He had begun something irreversible, something bigger than himself. A new Africa was rising, and as the cameras captured the scene, the world watched as history was made. The media could no longer ignore what had happened. The headlines were full of shock, disbelief, and awe at Ibrahim's unrelenting courage. The world could not look away. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected kindness. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs it today. Let's continue to spread the message of justice, courage, and the power of speaking truth.